The Saturday afternoon sun reflected off the rows of luxury vehicles in the parking lot of Premier Motors Dallas. When Nicole Barrett walked through the front doors wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt, her natural hair pulled into a ponytail, carrying a purse from Target instead of the designer bags she usually carried to board meetings. She looked like exactly what she was pretending to be, a regular customer browsing for a car on her day off. What the sales staff couldn't know, what they had no way of recognizing, was that the woman in casual clothes looking at the BMW 7 Series on the showroom floor was the CEO and founder of the entire Premier Motors chain, a network of 37 luxury dealerships across the South that generated $400 million in annual revenue. Nicole had built this empire from a single used car lot in Houston 15 years ago, had grown it through aggressive expansion and a stated commitment to treating every customer with respect, regardless of how they looked or what zip code they came from. But lately she'd been hearing complaints, whispers about discrimination at the Dallas location, customers calling corporate to report being ignored or treated rudely, online reviews mentioning salespeople who made assumptions based on appearance. Nicole could have sent corporate investigators or mystery shoppers. Instead, she decided to see for herself what was happening in a dealership that bore her name but apparently didn't share her values. She'd been on the showroom floor for exactly 4 minutes when a young black couple walked in holding hands, both dressed casually in jeans and sneakers, and 3 salespeople who'd been standing near the coffee station actively turned away and suddenly became very busy with paperwork. The couple stood looking at a Mercedes SUV for 2 full minutes without a single person approaching to help them. Then Nicole watched as a white couple in business attire entered and were immediately greeted by 2 salespeople competing to assist them. That's when Nicole decided that what she was about to do wasn't going to be subtle. If that opening made your blood boil, if you already know this is heading toward the kind of accountability that makes you believe in justice, then hit that like button right now. Share this with everyone who's ever been ignored in a store or dismissed because of how they looked. Who needs to see what happens when discrimination gets exposed by the one person with the power to burn it all down and rebuild it right? Subscribe to Acts of Depth because we tell the stories about moments when CEOs actually enforce the values they claim to believe in, when undercover revelations lead to immediate consequences, when people who've been marginalized get vindication and the people who marginalize them get exactly what they deserve. Now, let me take you back to understand who Nicole Barrett was and why what she witnessed in her own dealership would trigger a reckoning that would change 37 businesses and hundreds of lives. Nicole Barrett had started selling cars at 19 years old out of necessity after her plans for college had been derailed by her father's sudden death and the discovery that his small business had debts that consumed everything her family owned. She'd gotten a job at a used car dealership in Houston's 3rd Ward, one of those lots with inflatable decorations and hand-painted signs promising guaranteed approval to people whose credit had been destroyed by medical bills or predatory loans. Nicole had been good at sales because she'd actually cared about matching people with vehicles they could afford and maintain, because she'd been honest about what she was selling instead of hiding problems, because she'd treated customers with the respect the other salespeople reserved for people who could afford brand new luxury cars. Within 2 years, she'd been the top salesperson at the lot. Within 5 years, she'd saved enough to buy the lot from the owner, who was retiring. And then Nicole had done something unusual. She'd transformed it from a predatory operation into an honest dealership that genuinely served the working-class community around it. She'd offered fair prices and real warranties. She'd employed mechanics who actually fixed problems instead of just covering them up. She'd created financing options that didn't trap people in debt spirals. And her business had thrived because turns out that treating people well was not only morally correct, but also profitable when customer loyalty and word of mouth generated more business than predatory tactics ever could. Nicole had expanded slowly and carefully, buying struggling dealerships and transforming them using the same principles: honesty, respect, and the understanding that everyone deserved quality service regardless of their background. By 34 years old, she'd built Premier Motors into a regional powerhouse with locations across Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. She'd become a millionaire several times over. She'd been featured in business magazines as an example of ethical entrepreneurship in an industry known for the opposite. And she'd made a commitment that every dealership bearing the Premier Motors name would treat customers the way she'd wished to be treated when she'd been a 19-year-old black woman working in a space that often dismissed people who looked like her. But you can't scale culture as easily as you scale locations. And what Nicole was witnessing at the Dallas dealership suggested that somewhere in the growth, her values had been lost or ignored by staff who'd learned they could get away with discrimination as long as the sales numbers looked good. The young black couple was still standing by the Mercedes, now actively being ignored by four salespeople who were within visual range, but acting like they were invisible. Nicole walked over to them directly. "Hi, I'm Nicole. Are you folks looking for something specific? I'd be happy to help." The woman, who looked about 25, smiled with relief. "Thank you. We've been trying to get someone's attention for 10 minutes. We're looking for a reliable SUV, something safe. We're expecting our first baby and want to upgrade from my sedan." Her hand went to her belly, a small gesture that made Nicole's chest tighten with anger at the salespeople who'd ignored a pregnant woman. "Congratulations, let me show you a few options." Nicole spent the next 20 minutes walking the couple through several SUVs, asking about their needs and budget and priorities the way she'd trained every salesperson in her company to do. She was explaining the safety features of a Lexus RX when she noticed one of the salespeople, a man in his 40s wearing too much cologne and a smirk, watching her with irritation. He approached with the aggressive posture of someone about to establish dominance. "Excuse me, who are you? You can't just walk around the showroom selling cars. That's soliciting, and I'm going to have to ask you to leave." His name tag read Steve Morrison, senior sales consultant. Nicole looked at him calmly. "I'm helping these customers since nobody else seemed interested in doing so. They've been here 15 minutes without anyone approaching them." Steve glanced at the couple with barely concealed dismissal. "Yeah, well, we focus our time on serious buyers, people who can actually afford what we sell, not folks who are just looking." The casual cruelty of it, the assumption that this young couple couldn't afford a luxury vehicle based on nothing except how they looked, made Nicole's decision about what came next very easy. The young man, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. "We have $75,000 approved financing through our credit union. We're absolutely serious buyers. We just needed someone to actually help us." Steve's expression flickered with something that might have been embarrassment. He'd been capable of it, but instead, he doubled down. "Then you should have dressed appropriately if you wanted to be taken seriously. This isn't Walmart. We expect a certain caliber of clientele." Nicole felt the fury building but kept her voice level. "Steve, I want you to remember this conversation. I want you to remember exactly what you just said to these customers, because in about 5 minutes, you're going to deeply regret it." She turned back to the couple. "I apologize for how you've been treated here. This isn't what Premier Motors is supposed to represent. Give me your contact information, and I'm going to personally make sure you get the vehicle you need at a price that's fair and from a salesperson who actually values your business." She pulled out her phone and took down their information while Steve stood there looking confused and angry. Then Nicole excused herself and walked to the sales manager's office. The sales manager was a man named Richard Chen, who'd been with the Dallas location for 3 years, hired by the previous manager before Nicole had done a recent restructuring of regional leadership. He looked up from his computer when Nicole entered without knocking. "Can I help you?" His tone suggested he was annoyed by the interruption. "I'm Nicole Barrett. I own this dealership and 36 others, and I've been on your showroom floor for 25 minutes watching your staff ignore minority customers while competing to help white customers. I just watched Steve Morrison tell a black couple with $75,000 in approved financing that they weren't serious buyers and should have dressed appropriately for your caliber of clientele. So yes, you can help me. You can call every single salesperson into the conference room right now because I'm about to fire everyone involved in what I just witnessed." Richard's face went through several colors. "Ms. Barrett, I wasn't aware you were visiting. If you'd known I was here, you would have made sure everyone was on their best behavior. But I didn't want best behavior for the CEO. I wanted to see actual behavior when no one important was watching. And what I saw was discrimination so casual that your staff doesn't even try to hide it. So call them in. Now." Richard made the call while Nicole stood by the window looking out at the inventory she owned, the building she'd paid for, the brand she'd built on the principle that everyone deserved respect and honest service. 15 minutes later, the entire sales staff of the Dallas location was assembled in the conference room. 12 salespeople, 2 finance managers, and Richard. They were talking among themselves, speculating about why they'd been called in on a Saturday, some looking annoyed at the interruption to their day. Nicole walked to the front of the room and the conversation died as they registered that this wasn't someone they recognized. Steve Morrison was sitting in the back row, still wearing that smirk. Nicole addressed the room with the voice she used in board meetings, the one that carried authority earned through building something from nothing. My name is Nicole Barrett. I'm the founder and CEO of Premier Motors. I own this dealership and every other one in our network, and I've spent the past 30 minutes walking this showroom floor as an undercover customer, observing how you treat people. The room went completely silent. Steve's smirk disappeared. In that 30 minutes, I watched a young black couple stand on the showroom floor for over 10 minutes without a single person approaching to help them, while multiple salespeople actively turned away. I watched those same salespeople immediately compete to help a white couple who walked in minutes later. I personally assisted the black couple and was confronted by Steve Morrison, who told me I needed to leave, and who then told the customers they should have dressed appropriately if they wanted to be taken seriously at a dealership for your caliber of clientele. Those customers had $75,000 in approved financing. They were ready to buy today, and they were ignored and insulted because your staff made assumptions based on race. Nicole let that sink in while she watched the room's reactions. Some people looked genuinely shocked and ashamed. Others looked defensive. Steve looked like he was calculating whether he could talk his way out of this. I built this company on the principle that every customer deserves respect and honest service, regardless of their background. I've stated that value in every training manual, every company meeting, every message I've sent to staff across our network. And yet here, in a dealership that bears the name I built, you've created a culture where discrimination is so normalized that you don't even bother hiding it. Nicole pulled out her phone and brought up the company's discrimination policy. This is from the employee handbook every single one of you signed. Premier Motors is committed to providing equal service to all customers, or regardless of race, gender, religion, or economic status. Employees found to be discriminating against customers will face immediate termination. That policy exists because I know what it feels like to be dismissed. I know what it's like to walk into a business and be treated like you don't belong because of how you look. She looked directly at Steve. Steve Morrison, you're fired, effective immediately. You violated company policy and you demonstrated exactly the kind of prejudice that I won't tolerate in any business I own. Security will escort you out and your final paycheck will be mailed. Steve stood up, his face red. You can't fire me for that. I've been here 5 years. I'm your top salesman. I make this location money. You make this location money by alienating the customers you decide aren't worth your time. How many people have walked out of here without buying because you and people like you ignored them? How many potential lifetime customers did we lose because you couldn't see past your own prejudices? Nicole gestured to security who'd been called in. Remove him now. Steve was escorted out, still protesting, while Nicole turned back to the remaining staff. I watched 3 other salespeople actively avoid helping that couple. I have their names from their name tags. James Wilson, Patricia Vaughn, Michael Torres. You're also terminated. Same reason, same policy violation. You'll be escorted out after this meeting. The 3 people she'd named looked stunned. Patricia tried to object. I didn't say anything to them, I just didn't approach them. Exactly. You saw customers on the floor and actively chose not to help them. Then I watched you compete to help the white couple who arrived later. That's discrimination through selective service. It violates policy. You're done. Nicole continued down her list. She'd been paying close attention during her time on the floor. A finance manager who she'd overheard telling another employee to watch out for those types trying to get financing they can't afford. When a Latino family entered. Fired. 2 more salespeople she'd observed steering minority customers toward used vehicles while showing white customers the new luxury inventory. Fired. By the time she was done, she'd terminated 8 of the 12 salespeople, both finance managers, and told Richard Chen that he was on probation. You're the sales manager. This culture existed under your watch. Either you were actively enabling it or you were negligent in stopping it. Neither is acceptable. You have 30 days to prove you can rebuild this team according to actual company values, or you're next. The remaining 4 salespeople, who'd either actively helped minority customers or who Nicole hadn't witnessed discriminating, were told they'd be getting raises and promotions for being the kind of employees who actually represented what Premier Motors should be. One of them, a young woman named Jennifer Park, who Nicole had watched give excellent service to an elderly black gentleman buying a sedan, was promoted to interim sales manager. The room emptied out slowly, people processing what had just happened. Half the staff gone in under an hour because the CEO had shown up unannounced and witnessed exactly what happened when no one was watching. Nicole spent the rest of that Saturday at the Dallas dealership making calls. She called the young black couple and offered them the Lexus they'd wanted at invoice pricing, a discount that would save them $8,000 as an apology for how they'd been treated. They accepted and came back that evening to complete the purchase, with Jennifer handling the sale. Nicole called her regional directors and scheduled undercover visits to every single dealership in the Premier Motors network, because if Dallas had this problem, others might too. She called her HR department and ordered a complete review of hiring practices and training programs to understand how employees who clearly didn't share company values had been hired and retained. And she called a meeting with her executive team for Monday morning, where she'd be presenting a complete overhaul of how they monitored and enforced their stated commitment to equal service. By the time Nicole left the dealership that night, it was past 9 p.m. She was exhausted but felt something she hadn't felt in years, reconnected to why she'd started this business in the first place. Not to build wealth, though that had happened, not to create an empire, though she'd done that too, but to prove that you could run a successful business while treating people with dignity. Somewhere in the scaling and the growth, that mission had been lost at locations where managers and staff had prioritized profits over people and where discrimination had been tolerated as long as sales numbers looked good. Nicole was done tolerating it. Over the following 3 months, Nicole personally visited every Premier Motors location unannounced and undercover. What she found was a mixed picture. Some dealerships genuinely lived the values she'd established, treating every customer with respect and providing equal service regardless of background. Those locations got public recognition and bonuses for their staff. Other dealerships showed patterns similar to Dallas: subtle discrimination, selective service, assumptions about who could afford what based on appearance. Those locations got cleaned out. In total, Nicole terminated 63 employees across the network for discrimination, reformed her hiring process to include implicit bias testing, and implemented a mystery shopper program where actors from diverse backgrounds would visit dealerships monthly to assess service quality, with results tied directly to manager compensation. She also started a community outreach program, partnering with credit unions and community organizations to help first-time buyers from underserved communities get fair financing and quality vehicles. The program was profitable because those customers became loyal and referred others, proving again that doing right and doing well weren't mutually exclusive. The story of the mass firing at the Dallas dealership leaked to media and went viral. Some coverage was positive, celebrating a CEO who'd actually enforced her stated values. Other coverage criticized her for being too harsh, for not giving employees chances to improve. Nicole responded in interviews with clarity about why immediate termination had been necessary. Discrimination isn't a training gap. It's a values gap. I can teach someone about our inventory or our financing options. I can't teach them to see other humans as worthy of respect. That should already be there. When it's not, when employees actively harm customers through their prejudice, they can't represent a company built on the opposite principle.